sponsor, and they're excited that they're going to be WAAO vehicles driving themselves around our city sometime soon. We also are excited to have Cruise, who also already has vehicles driving around our city. And as you'll see further in the longer summit, we want to bring everyone together, including technology. We think if our local governments and our state government are not taking AV, CV, ITS seriously, we're not serious about traffic deaths. If we think that magical innovations are going to solve all our problems, we're also not serious about traffic deaths. We need everybody at the table. Also like to say thank you to Safe Streets Austin is helping out with some of the events at the Future Thing, AAA Texas, Tool Design, Nelson Nygaard, Fair and Piers, and Black and Motal. And also Cat Metro. And so we're very excited at the 2-day summit. You will all get some free transit passes, and the people from outside of Boston get to try out our transit. And we will have an element of the summit about the role of access by transit, the access to walkable urban places connected by high-quality transit in a Vision Zero approach. So with all those introductions, I think we have an amazing program.
So, esteemed colleagues and fellow advocates of Vision Zero, I just really want to thank y'all all for being at this critical Vision Zero Summit today. I am very honored to welcome you as we embark on a journey towards achieving the audacious goal of zero traffic deaths and incapacitating injuries. Today, we gather not only as experts and leaders, but as compassionate human beings who understand the profound significance of our mission. Before I delve into the importance of Vision Zero, I want to share a very personal story. Many of you have already heard about Ben. In 2016, my world was forever changed when my 9-year-old nephew, a bright and promising young boy, was struck by the driver of a pickup truck. The crash left him incapacitated, robbing him of the childhood he deserved. For 5 long years, he bravely fought for his life, enduring unimaginable pain, physical limitations, and emotional turmoil, while his parents and brother and the rest of us just watched him decline. Sadly, we lost him in 2021, which is a heartbreaking reminder of the devastating consequences of traffic crashes. Ben's story is not unique, y'all. Every day, countless families around the world experience the anguish of losing a loved one or witnessing their own lives forever altered due to traffic collisions. This is why Vision Zero is not just a concept. It is a moral imperative. It's a pledge to our communities, our children, and the generations yet to come. As the co-founder of Central Texas Families for Safe Streets, a group composed of families and victims affected by traffic violence, I have seen firsthand the power of collective action and the strength of survivors who refuse to be silent. We are here today not just as advocates, but as living testaments to the urgency of this mission. Vision Zero represents a commitment to fundamentally change the way we approach road safety. It challenges us to believe that zero fatalities and incapacitating injuries are not just an idealistic dream, but an achievable reality. And here are the reasons why Vision Zero is so important. Human lives matter. Every life lost on our roads is an irreplaceable tragedy. We can never fix or fully compensate for a fatal car crash for the families involved. And Vision Zero recognizes the inherent value of every person, whether they're a pedestrian, a cyclist, or a driver. Families and communities. The ripple effects of traffic crashes extend far beyond the victims themselves. Families are shattered, like ours, communities scarred, and the emotional toll is immeasurable. By striving for zero, we aim to protect not just individuals, but the very fabric of our society. Innovation and technology. Embracing Vision Zero challenges us to innovate and leverage cutting-edge technology to make our roads safer. From autonomous vehicles like the ones we're seeing around town, to smart infrastructure our journey towards zero will drive advancements that benefit all of us. Sustainable cities. Achieving Vision Zero aligns perfectly with our goals of creating sustainable, livable, affordable cities. Safer streets encourage active transportation, reduce pollution, and promote healthier, happier communities. Economic impact. Traffic crashes impose a significant economic burden on our society. Medical expenses, rehab, lost productivity, and property damage costs. Those are in the billions every year. Vision Zero just isn't about saving lives, it's also about saving resources. Inspiration for change. When we aim for the impossible, we inspire change. Vision Zero compels us to rethink our transportation systems, adopt evidence-based policies, and work together as a global community to create safer roads. Today, my nephew's story serves as a painful reminder of why we cannot afford to falter in our pursuit of Vision Zero. We owe it to him and countless others who have suffered needlessly to redouble our efforts, to be bold and unwavering in our commitment to road safety. As we embark on this summit, let us come together not only as professionals, but as advocates, as parents, as siblings, and as friends. Let's share our knowledge, our experiences, and our strategies to drive change. Let us ignite the flame of hope and determination in our hearts, knowing that zero traffic deaths and incapacitating injuries are not just an aspiration, but a promise we owe to our loved ones and future generations. Thank you so much for being here today, for being a part of this cause, and for standing with me in the pursuit of safer, more compassionate world. Together, we will turn Vision Zero from a vision to a reality. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kathy. The story is that I was going to do some slides, I'm going to skip them. But we have a lot of problems. We have a lot of people who are dying on the streets of Texas in a drunk driving crash. We have people who are trying to walk to the store and are hit as a pedestrian. And so we need to solve all these things. The state of Texas has a goal to end traffic deaths by 2050, to cut traffic deaths in half by 2035. And so every terrible thing that keeps happening over and over again, each one of those, we need people working to reduce the amount of people being hurt in that way. And so pedestrian deaths, we need people who are figuring out how to make it safe to walk in Texas and to have less people dying every single year. And so the point is we need every level of government. And I'm very excited that we brought today two levels of government where a lot of things have been happening. Maybe one way to introduce our next set of speakers is that we cities and counties and metropolitan planning organizations across our state have received these Safe Streets for All grants. And we are going to go from about 12 governments in the state being committed to goals to end traffic deaths and working on it in a safe systems approach to a whole lot more. And luckily, there are some shining examples in our state of success in this work. The city of San Antonio and the city of Austin led the way on this, and there are a lot of lessons learned on how these cities have approached things. And so we asked a team from the city of Austin to come share with you how the city of Austin is ending traffic deaths. We'll have 4 people.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us. Really appreciative of Jay and his team for putting this on. I think there's been this evolution of Vision Zero in Texas cities over the last couple of years, as Jay was mentioning. That's really exciting. Going from San Antonio and Austin to now Dallas and Houston, and Fort Worth and Laredo and El Paso and all these cities. It's really exciting to see, and I think there's a huge opportunity because Texas really does, unfortunately, lead the country in a lot of these grim statistics. I think something like 10% of the traffic fatalities in the country are in Texas. So, we have a lot of work to do, but it's things like this where we can bring different people together and talk about solutions that I'm really excited about. So I'm going to give a little overview on some of the work we're doing here in Austin. We've been a Vision Zero city since around 2015, 2016 timeframe, and I think we've made a lot of progress. We also have a long way to go, which I'll talk about here, but I'm hoping we can share some of the things that we've been doing and maybe hopefully inspire some things from others, and we're here to learn as well, so I'm happy to have a discussion after that.
Implement changes, but still part of our work is looking at fatal and serious injury crashes, and one thing that we do on a regular cadence is a fatality review board, which occurs once a month. So with every crash that occurs in the Austin city limits, we gather information through crash reports and identify what happened, what factors were contributing in those instances, and then also identifying through our data, has there been a history of similar patterns, and how we can address these crashes in either our upcoming scope of projects or any interim low-cost, high impact treatment. So what we have here is a crash diagram from a location back in 2019 on East Slaughter Lane. And this actually was a location of 2 fatal crashes in that year that involved 2 opposing driveways across from each other on East Slaughter Lane. And through initial discussions, there were other talks about how can we address the crossing or the traffic around here, and what we ultimately implemented was an access management treatment where we closed off the turning movement that would come from either one of those driveways. So you can see that we have this low-cost treatment where we put yellow flex posts along the median to prevent that turning movement. And so rather than it being more of a reactive approach, we still think of these things as part of larger patterns. And outside of that, we also, as a city, we work internally with our department partners, as well as at the county level. We have something called the Vision Zero Leadership Council, and we meet fairly regularly, where we report out our data that we have about how we've been progressing with our goals so far, like how many fatalities, serious injuries that we've had so far, how we compare through 3-year averages, 5-year averages, what the projected numbers might look like through the end of the year. But we also report out about our initiatives and solicit feedback from our partners, and also ask to identify any representatives within their agencies who might be able to connect us to resources that would help roll out these initiatives even better.
10 years or so trying to incorporate, a lot of our work pre-bond funding was chasing resurfacing, finding opportunities to make changes really at a fraction of the cost of a standalone project. And where that continues to be the case, it's also overlapped with these major intersection work but in the meantime, we've sort of been able to get better at the quick build, so incorporating pedestrian crossings in the form of islands or curb extensions, at the spacing that, thanks to Joel's work, we now understand a crossing gap is a distance of, say, 600 feet or more. It would be considered a gap, and so being able to fill those gaps. So on a street like, for example, North Loop, portions of it got resurfaced, and we're able to put in a series of either islands themselves or teardrops that will become islands once we can build a curb ramp, for example. So that's been a part of our work pretty consistently. 12th Street, for example, we're looking at 21 islands between Navasota Street and Weberville Road, for example, which sort of offers that frequency. And then with the ATX Walk Bike Roll, there's now, for the first time ever, pedestrian crossing infrastructure plan, I would call it, that sort of looks at all the gaps throughout the whole city, and we've been able to take that data and overlay it with the sidewalk service plan. So where are we gonna be building sidewalks? Where can we then add curb ramps and get more crossings, or the resurfacing plan as well, like looking at where does that overlap. So those have been some of our strategies to kind of accelerate the work that you're talking about. I'm particularly excited about starting a curb ramp fund that just kind of goes all over the place and builds curb ramps so that we can put crossings in at an interval that closes the gaps. So that I'll pass it to anybody else who wants to say things.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think a lot about cost benefit and understanding kind of there's the crash reduction kind of potency of any tool. So like for crossing islands, I think it's a 60% pedestrian crash reduction kind of factor, is like the FHWA. So if you, like the pedestrian hybrid beacon, we coach people in the public, like maybe don't always want a pedestrian hybrid beacon, you know, because we can put in, if we're putting in concrete pedestrian crossing islands, we can do 5 or 6 for every PHP. If we do it in flex posts with curb ramps, you know, we need to make it ADA, so we need the curb ramps. Even flex posts, you're gonna get like in that kind of 90% yielding kind of compliance compared to almost nothing without them, and you still get the crash reduction factors, and we could probably do, I don't know, have 30, 40 of those for the cost of a pedestrian hybrid beacon. So that, you know, when Laura's talking about a project that's, I think, about 3 miles long, and we're able to get 21 pedestrian crossing islands, which also have horizontal motor vehicle deflection and have traffic calming effects. You know, we start talking about how our work is really kind of all the same. You know, this is good for pedestrian network, crossing densities, traffic calming, you know, bringing speeds into kind of a human scale. That even translates into, you know, put my hat on, good for bicycle infrastructure and safety of those facilities. Sorry, one more quick thing. Big plug for our Safe Routes to School program and our sidewalk programs. Like, we're rebuilding corners and curb ramps all the time. So we have a new transportation criteria manual that says, you know, when a neighborhood street, any neighborhood street basically should be bulbed out. So we're able to do that kind of by right without talking to a bunch of different partners, without doing design. They can just do it. I just heard they have a saying now, when in doubt, bulb out. I'm just saying, like, they're doing this everywhere. You know, some of the trickier ones, like we do kind of custom design on, but these are things that, like, when you're touching a corner ramp, why don't you reassess the geometry of the street, make a safer crossing, even just a more conducive environment. I heard something a long time ago that, like, the number of people walking and biking on the street is like the most powerful traffic calming and highest correlation with safety. And if you have a comfortable, bulbed out, you know, prolific in your city, and it's a comfortable place to walk, you'll have more people walking, biking, and then you get the additional benefits of that.
Hi, my name is Robin Hoffmeyer. I'm with Adaptive Texas, and I would like to thank y'all today. This curb cut program, I mean, that's our lifeblood for French, you know, the city. But I'm curious, I didn't hear anyone mention audio, video, and textile indicators for hearing impaired and blind people. And I was wondering if those were implemented in your plan, and, you know, at least at the main intersections, if not at the little side, you know, the intermediate areas in the neighborhoods for the curb cuts. 'Cause I use one of those curb cuts to get to my bus stop every morning, you know, which has a little stop sign that says stop for pedestrian crossing, but after people don't, you know, I have to wait. But, you know, there's no visual or here, you know, audio or textile indicators at the smaller ones. So I was wondering if y'all had any ideas about that.
Yeah, I can speak to, you know, right now it's on a project by project basis to look at that. But one of the exciting things about the ATX Walk Bike Roll effort in the pedestrian crossing infrastructure plan is one of our main action items is to do an ADA transition plan for crossings. And so we've been seeking funding through the Safe Streets for All. So Joel talked about the $28 million that was awarded to the city. We went for another one to try to get some additional funding, kind of breathe more life into our pedestrian crossing program. It's not very highly funded at this point, but shows a lot of promise. So it would be a way for us to look comprehensively, systemically at those types of elements whenever we do really understand the need, and then be able to more systemically, I think, fund and approach that beyond just the project by project basis that we're on now.
And I was going to throw in a question, and you guys, others got to it. And I think I'm very excited about, I guess the way Nathan said it, is that I think in a bunch of ways, the city of Austin and TxDOT Austin have engaged, and we need other cities and other TxDOT districts, I think, to learn from that and figure out how to talk in the ways that people are talking here. Next, I'm very excited to bring up our friend from Houston, from Link Houston. Gabe Casraz is the executive director of Link Houston. And I was going to look up your title, but when I was in Houston, Gabe worked in the mayor's office and has been a leader for the people of Houston, building a accessible Houston, both working for the city to make Houston accessible for all, but now working at Link Houston, leading their efforts. And so ask Gabe to come up and give his take on how safe multimodal future is a key part of how we make Texas safe for everybody. So with that, thanks so much for being here, Gabe.
All right, we're improvising here. Good morning, everyone. As Jay said, and thank you, Jay, for that very kind introduction. My name is Gabe Casares, and I'm the Executive Director of Link Houston. We are a nonprofit that advocates for a robust and equitable transportation network so all people can reach opportunity. We envision a Houston where it's possible to be a first-class resident without owning a car, and we stand in solidarity with others across the state who envision the same for their own communities. For millions of Texans who don't or can't drive, we are far from achieving that vision. I don't need to tell this room that in Texas, we have not had a road-free death on our roads since the year 2000. But I'll offer some perspective on the stories we hear in Houston. A woman and a man in a wheelchair that she was helping both hit and killed in a faded, unsignalized crosswalk across a busy shopping center. A man in his 60s on his bike hit and killed crossing a 60-foot wide road between two residential neighborhoods, a quarter mile from the nearest traffic signal. With stories like this, it's no surprise that people traveling outside of cars are overrepresented in these dismal statistics. We are seeing some successes here and there, but by and large, across the state, the streak shows no sign of letting up. We can't simply cram a zero deaths goal into a system that is producing death with such regularity. We can't prioritize the free flow of traffic and designs that we know are unsafe, and then hope for the best in spite of it. And we can't keep assuming that everyone will or even can drive. To not just end the streak, but to end road death entirely, we must recognize the contradiction of our existing priorities. Speed is the leading factor in fatal crashes, yet it is the surest signal of a well-performing traffic level of service. The dual goal of safety and speed are pulling against each other, especially in our urban areas where most Texans live. It doesn't have to be this way. Safety can align with our broadest goals for our transportation system and our society. But a Vision Zero strategy requires a different approach. one that prioritizes the dignity of everyone who uses our roads, whether walking, rolling, biking, using transit, or yes, even driving. Thanks for having me, Jack.
Thank you so much, Gabe, and thanks for being here. And so we are going to keep going, and I'm very excited to continue this conversation because I'm hoping everyone understands that every level of government, we need action, we need a system safety approach, comprehensive changes to the way we do things, and a lot has been happening at the Texas Department of Transportation in the last 5 years. A lot of very good things are happening, and so we asked some of the leaders of TxDOT to come and tell us about those things. I completely left my little thing. And so I'm going to hand them the mic, and one of the things we were talking about, just to give a little intro, is fixing our transportation system is very complicated, and there's a lot of things. And so we're not going to be able to talk about all the things TxDOT is doing, but I hope you get a flavor of some of the approaches happening, and we can broaden these discussions at the coming summit. So with that, I hope you guys can come up and join me up here. We asked Jessica Butler to lead this discussion, who has been has moved up the ranks of TxDOT in recent history, and many of us have been very excited to see you filling your role. And so, may I ask you off the stage and let you introduce everybody? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jay. And really, go ahead and sit down. Thank you so much for having us. I just want to echo that, I agree that it's going to take all levels of government, but also communities coming together to talk about this, and also making that commitment on the personal level as individuals to address the Vision Zero. And as Jay mentioned, our commissioners committed to the zero deaths on Texas roadway goal by 2050 back in 2019. And of course, it's, as Jay mentioned, to cut it in half by 2035. So we're very committed to Vision Zero, and again, just very happy to be here. I will say on a personal level, I remember coming here many years ago. It was probably in 2018. I was in design division then. And we were just starting to talk about this culture shift called system safety at the time. So it's really cool to be back here now in 2023 with these wonderful colleagues of mine who I know are just as passionate about safety as I am, talking about things that were really just being discussed and sort of at the scoping level at that point in 2018, and a lot of them I think have come to fruition. So with that, I'll let everyone introduce themselves. Why don't we start at the end? Michael, could you tell us just who you are and what you do for TxDOT, and maybe expand the safety side of that as much as possible? So.
Sure, absolutely. I apologize, I'm going to try to be going around the stand a couple times. So, my name is Michael Chacon. I am the director of the Traffic Safety Division for TxDOT. So I've been in that role. For 7 years now. I've been with TxDOT for 29 years. One thing I want to kind of highlight of what our division does is, first off, we provide support to all 25 of our TxDOT district offices across the state. Some of the things that we do from a safety perspective, which is very large. So first off, we provide guidance for anything that, as I like to describe it, on top of the roadway. So your signing, your striping, your work zones, your signals, things of that sort, bike facilities. It's part of what's called the Manual and Uniform Traffic Control Devices, MTCD. We issue that document on behalf of the state for Texas, and along with a lot of other standards for construction plan sets, things like that.
Now, thank you, Michael. Bonnie?
Hi, I'm Bonnie Sherman. I am the Bicycle and Pedestrian Program Supervisor at TxDOT. My position is in TxDOT's Public Transportation Division. So we work with urban and rural transit districts and transit agencies also on the bicycle and pedestrian side, we work with these guys and their staffs and the other divisions across the state to develop guidance and resources for anyone working in the bike ped realm, but especially for our districts. We have 25 districts across the state, and they're like mini DOTs in and of themselves, and so we provide support to them in providing safe accommodations for bicyclists and pedestrians.
Isabel?
Morning, everyone. I'm Isabel Rampton. I'm the director of the design division for TxDOT. I've been with TxDOT for 25 years now, mostly focused in project development, project delivery. I've spent quite a bit of years designing projects. In my current role as the director of design division, I oversee the statewide guidance for how we design our roadways. We're the ones that publish the roadway design guidelines, that sets the design criteria and things that, as we're working on projects, how we're engineering our roadways. When it comes to safety, we make sure that, safety is part of every project as we're designing it, and how can we incorporate and evaluate the safety of our roadways, evaluate how design decisions can affect safety, and we help, support statewide the districts that are working on projects. We give them tools so they can really evaluate their project, what things can improve the safety as they're working on their projects, and make it easier on them to make safety-driven decisions. We also just published a recent traffic safety analysis manual to really standardize how we evaluate our projects statewide. So that was kind of the first time that we have a document like this one. And again, we just kind of support, the 25 districts that they're working on projects and kind of looking for engineering ways of how we can improve our roadways and make it safer for everybody. Not just cars, but all users, for bicycles or pedestrians or transit, making sure that everyone in our right of way, we're incorporating that in every project.
Wonderful, thank you. And as mentioned in the introduction, really safety is a part of everything we do. So if you asked us, what are you doing for safety at TxDOT, that would be much longer than we have in this segment. So we're going to focus on, based on this distinguished panel, really what are we doing to improve safety on the planning side, the design side, and the operations side, and how, as Marcel just said, how are we really integrating that into each and every project? Because that is one of our goals. We say every project is a safety project, so our goal is to maximize and optimize how much safety we can build into each and every job. And so I think we have a great panel to elaborate on that.
Who wants the one question? Preston?
Thank you. I want to say you talked an awful lot about infrastructure, and I really love it. But Doug and I have spent millions of TxDOT dollars on education through grants. And I didn't hear a lot of that. I heard you talk about some of that. But what projects or what programs is TxDOT funding now, which is training people? We train kids in school, we train teachers in school, and we train citizens to look at what can be done there through walk audits. And I didn't hear any of that.
Thank you for that question. So yes, that falls under our purview as well. So each year we do get federal funds or grants from NHTSA to address a lot of different areas of emphasis for us. And I know last year alone, we funded approximately $95 million worth of educational type grants. So thank you to you for your hard work on that, because it is a big effort. And so these funds are dedicated to certain specific areas, meaning there are some directly related to impaired driving, there's some directly impacting pedestrian safety. I know last year alone we had close to $16 million dedicated towards pedestrian and bicycle safety, which we were very glad to see. And a lot of that is about education, getting information out to schools. We put a big focus on our elementaries, middle schools, and high schools, believe it or not. We try to hit all those age groups, but we try to target the younger children first, because we notice that makes a big impact when you can talk to them and share with them about the importance of safety.
Peter Eccles to come up on stage, who works with Link Houston, and we're going to sit down and just turn yourself on. The idea is you have heard from how the city of Austin is ending traffic deaths and how TxDOT is ending traffic deaths. And then we wanted to make some space for all the advocates and the community members and local leaders have a lot of ideas. And I hope we're trying to build the space for conversations where we can all listen to each other. I thought I'd start this with a kind of a funny story that Scott White, who works for Farm City, and I were having a conversation about advocacy and about showing up at TxDOT or the Texas Transportation Commission meetings and yelling at them, being mad, and like what works and how do we actually help and improve people's lives. And we kind of got to this sort of funny take that, I mean, I am mad that people are being hurt today on our streets, and I'm furious, and I want things better. And it makes sense that if people learn about these things and don't get mad, it's weird. And so everybody should go yell at the Texas Transportation Commission when they're ready. But the point is that the second time, third time, you need to stop yelling and start coming up with some answers. And we really, I think there's a lot of space in Texas, and there really is change where community members and advocacy organizations are building answers with our local governments and with TxDOT. And so we wanted to kind of try to talk through some of the answers we think the voices outside of our governments are calling for. So
you might have been there at the Pedestrian Safety Forum in San Antonio. I was watching a panel on the role of law enforcement in enforcing things like speed limits, school zones, and all of the, some of the issues that are causing these horrible incidents on our roads. And so much of the conversation revolved around how can we get more officers out in the field? How can we free up officers to go and work more school zones and more work zones and things like that? And really the elephant in the room is when it comes to one of the most effective ways to enforce these things. Our hands are tied in Texas. We are not allowed to use camera enforcement at all. Years ago, first red light cameras were banned in Houston, and now at the statewide level just a few years ago. And I asked point blank to one of the officers on there, would this make your job easier? And he said, yeah, absolutely. I think that he was a little bit nervous of wading into what has become a very contentious political issue, but absolutely this would free up officers to do more pressing work, and at the same time, a camera does not have the same discriminatory traits. A camera doesn't carry a gun, all of these sorts of things that avoid some of these more negative situations. I really think that camera enforcement and automated enforcement needs to be a bigger part of the conversation.
Agreed.
I'll just add, I just think a really neat detail is that when New York advocates got the state to adopt speed cameras, and while they were doing the advocacy, some research came out showing that if the fine was $50 or the fine was $500 with threat of jail, it didn't make a difference on people's behavior. It was simply the idea that you could get in trouble in any kind of way change people's behavior. And so the advocates actually adopted that and said, let's set up the system so it is only $50. There is no ability for the speed camera fine to make you lose your driver's license or go to jail. But you did get caught. You got caught going fast, and you had to pay for that dangerous behavior. And so I think that kind of thinking can kind of change how we think about this. Speed was brought up, and speed kills, and it's really a much bigger problem than all of us realized. And if you look at all the acronyms nationwide, NHTSA, NTSB, AASHTO, NACTO, and I won't tell you what they are, but all the entities have been putting out reports over the last 10 years and basically saying, whoa, we've really messed up in the way we do speed. And all of us have been raised in Texas with streets designed as raceways. we have to shift this, and it's going to be hard. And so that's why we are advocating for comprehensive speed management strategies. The city of Austin adopted a comprehensive approach to speed management 5 years ago, and it's worked very well. And one of the things that's worked very well that I was very surprised is the city of Austin's been lowering speed limits all over town. Not a single person has shown up at City Hall to scream about it at every time they voted on this. I was ready to just go there and fight. The people of Austin are not up in arms like many of us might have thought they would be. So let's jump into, Peter, this whole idea of Strodes. Do you want to talk about that? What's Strode?
Sure. Strode is a concept that was first advanced through the Strong Towns movement, and the writer, the leader of that movement, Marone. And it's a portmanteau of street and road. A road is designed to move as many cars as possible. A street is a public space for people. And a strode is something that is trying to do both of those things at the same time. And we know that those two things are very contradictory, so the results are a lot of things that are pulling against each other. I think that everybody can recognize a strode in their own community. And in our urban areas, the effect of these strodes is especially deadly. We have roads that are designed basically as at-grade highways, where tons of our economic activity occurs, where there are people getting off and on the bus, people crossing the street, and the strode is just simply not designed to handle that. Another example in San Antonio that we have listed right here is Broadway, and some folks in the room might be familiar with some of the controversies there over the past year or two. We heard that safety is all well and good, and we certainly support safety on a road like Broadway, but not at the expense of capacity. And I think a lot of advocates would posit safety does not come at the expense of anything. That those two things cannot, one of them has to trump the other, and oftentimes they're in conflict with each other. In a dense urban environment with a lot of activity, you have to prioritize safety.
Spend the money. As I said earlier, if you have rumble strips down, if you have cable barriers, if you have wider roads, if you have more friction, better pavement so that you can stop more effectively, all of those kinds of things are excellent for safety, and so that's one of the wins. We also have more money in 4R and 4U and Category 12 and the others so that we can construct more roadways, and especially in rural Texas, but in all of Texas. There are more and more people, 1,300 people a day, up to maybe 2,000 is a number I've been told, are coming into Texas. And if you have got a massive amount of people coming in, you have to have ways to move those folks around. But the way I see things, I spend a lot of time on freight and on border trade and issues like that with the Texas Transportation Commission. You have to figure out how to get their food to them. You have to figure out how to get the stuff that's at their hardware store to them. You have to figure out how to get, so it's a freight issue trying to get all of this stuff. So you have to be working on roads being able to handle the trucks, and we have to be able to handle getting the products to the people that are moving to the state of Texas. So
I think the message here, and I know Dave's kind of given us the signal that our time's about it, but with that investment, $100 billion, there are specific safety categories, and then there are project categories in that funding that also have contributions to safety. And when we go through the process of selecting and scoring projects, safety is a key element, isn't it? And I think, to this group to understand too, is that while you all at the commission level have a very important role in the project selection process and overseeing the administration of the funds that are in the UTP, a lot of those decisions start at the local level. They started, you mentioned, we've got 25 districts around the state. They go everywhere from Childress to El Paso, to Houston, to Dallas. And then we've got 23 MPOs going to be up to 24, 25 when the new census numbers take effect, with Eagle Pass coming in. And then I think the new one up there in Denton's going to be folded into NCT COG, so it'll be about 24 MPOs. But that too, those two are important sources of funding and decision making on projects that we work with, and the administration of the funds in the UTP go out to those areas to begin that project selection process. As we're kind of wrapping up here, any remaining comments or anything like that that you would want to share with the audience here?
I think the only thing that's on my mind is if there's any specific thing that you want to ask. I think we'll take one question and try to make sure that if I didn't cover something that you're focused on safety about, I'll give you one run at that and try to answer your question.
Okay.
Or possibly challenge your question.
Maybe tricky question. I don't mean it to be charged, but I saw something in the legislative session that we were really watching, and I'm curious TxDOT's perspective, because I've seen a lot of safety treatments. I see like what did you call it, the passing lane kind of retrofits on rural highways, and they feel safer to drive, but the kind of legislative proposals to like look at lane conversions or road diets, whatever you want to call them, like reconfiguring roadways, just from a road design perspective, street design perspective, is really troubling. What we see kind of both locally and nationally, when you go from a 4-lane street to a 3-lane street, you create that separation, 25 to 40% crash reductions, 90% reductions in egregious speeding. So curious from a TxDOT perspective, if y'all have concerns of like losing the capability of that kind of tool through legislative action. And my hope would be that we, I really like the preface about, these should not be polarized issues. This is just like what's best practice, roundabouts, lane conversions, everything has a time and a place. I'm curious.
And I think the one thing that I hope you all take away is that I think we all agree on what the outcome is, and that's to get to zero deaths. I think sometimes we might violently agree on how we, or it may seem like we violently agree on how, or what it's going to take to get there. But that's important. That's important dialogue. I think Jay mentioned coming and yelling at the commission. Let's not yell at the commission. Have the dialogue. I respect Jay. He comes in and I can always count on him having getting his point across, but doing it in a clear and important area. And the same applies too with having the conversations at the legislative session. You mentioned the legislation that was filed and can go anywhere. Like anything, all legislation gets recycled and comes back again next year. So I think you all are aware of those issues. Personally, we don't like legislating design decisions. And so I think we would want to try to continue to preserve that authority with the Transportation Cabinet, and with the engineers, with the department on making those decisions where it may or may not be appropriate. But it's really important that we pay attention. Yeah, I think we've run over our time. Thank you for your patience and allowing us to be here today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your time and for both of your dedication to solving these issues together. And let's continue to work together and disagree and figure out how we can figure out agreements out of those disagreements. So, thank you. Thanks so much, everybody. This has been terrific. I hope you all have found this to be engaging and opening up your view of how we can address these issues together. Final